Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Actual Fluency podcast. And today I'm bringing you my talk with David James from the Polyglot Gathering in Berlin that was recently held at the A&O Hostel, the good old faithful A&O Hostel. And just before I put on the today's episode, I just want to bring a few comments about it. First of all, I want you to know that this episode is entirely uncut and uncensored, and it's quite a long episode, nearing almost 2 hours. So you might want to take this in two bites, so to speak. But recently, I've had at least one email telling me that I should edit my episodes more, my conversations more. And I appreciate all feedback. And if you have anything you want to address to me, be it positive, negative, whatever, just send me an email, and I'll definitely appreciate everything that you say. But I just had to address that the nature of the podcast is a conversational format. It's supposed to mimic real life. And so, for instance, somebody said, and this is totally fair feedback, but somebody said that something I had said during one of the episodes was completely stupid. And honestly, that's that's fine. In fact, I make it clear quite regularly that the reason that I have such great guests on is because I'm quite ignorant and stupid myself. So when I ask about different cultures and countries and traditions and all these things, it's not because I'm trying to look stupid. It's genuinely because I don't know any better. So I would hate for my podcast to have to spend 8 hours every episode to edit to make myself look good, or to get rid of silly situations, or something like that. So this episode is kind of a homage to the format where me and James talk in a hostel in Berlin, and with all the interruptions that you can imagine, all the technical not problems, but still. And due to the recording on location, obviously the audio quality isn't quite as good as when you record on Skype. But I hope you'll enjoy it anyway. David James is one of my biggest idols in the Polyglot community, and I've been following him for a long time. And I recently started using his goal list method for Hungarian, which I'll get back to soon with a blog post telling you about my experience doing it. But please enjoy this episode with David James, who's one of my favorite of all time. And yeah, it's uncensored, uncut, unfiltered, just like you're a fly on the wall in Berlin. So please enjoy it, and let me know what you think in the comments on the website. Record as well. If there's one thing I've learned through my incompetence as a sound engineer, it's have backup systems.
Okay, so we're here.
All
That's
right.
one thing that I can say without any son branché. I can say that we are here.
We're here, not there.
Ohne Hemmungen kann ich das sagen. Wir sind da. Oder hier oder da. Entweder hier sind wir oder da.
Yeah. In Russland, da.
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 Da. Очень.
But anyway, we're live from the Actual Fluency on location studio, and I'm here with David James, legend, and today we're getting to know him a little bit better and about his goal list method as well. So, David, for the people who don't know you, how did you get into language learning? What was your story coming up with the goal list and everything? If you could take us back to the beginning.
Well, the very beginning, I suppose, was just basically that I listened to the Eurovision Song Contest in the good old days when you had to sing in your own language. At some point they decided that you weren't allowed to, or that you were allowed to sing in English. And as Alex Rawling was just saying, English tends to ruin polyglotism. But at the time, you had to sing in your own language, so all the countries were singing a different language. And I just loved the sound of all of these countries. I was really interested to, I suppose I might have been about 7 or 8, and just kind of ignited in me a curiosity. What is it like to, instead of speaking English, which I obviously did by then, perhaps not grammatically perfectly, but I was able to speak English. Actually, at 7 I had a reading age of 21 in English. I was measured. So I had a pretty good grasp of English, but I was really interested in knowing what it was like to be a speaker of a different language, what that experience was like, to be able to think and to speak in a different language and to understand when somebody spoke to me. So instead of just listening to those songs, to be able to actually understand them. And of course, when Terry Wogan, as it was, would read the songs' names out, some of them seemed to be almost like you could work out which bit meant what, and it was interesting. But I mean, there wasn't one particular one that interested me more than the others. Just the whole thing of it, all those different languages, to be able to speak all of them, that's what came to me. But after a certain period, obviously, even at 8 years of age, in our school, you got the opportunity to do some French, and I tried to pay attention to that and tried to imitate it, to learn the words that they were telling me. And I suppose I was kind of like, I wasn't a particularly good student up until a certain point anyway, because I tended to be rather disruptive and not very well behaved at school. So until I was about 13 years of age, so I wouldn't say that I was particularly great, but as far as my schooling went, I paid probably more attention to the French than I did to most other things, and there was a little visit to France where we partnered up with these French kids and went to their homes, and I was able to say things like "c'est mon vélo, c'est ton vélo," stuff like that. And I remember saying to this other kid that he had 2 bikes, one for me, one for him. We were going to ride around on these bikes. So that much, and learn some songs, like as you do. I can still sing today some of the songs which they taught, like Alouette, Gentil Alouette, that sort of stuff. And actually, that they do this to kids, but it's, I can actually still sing those songs today, also from the same school. I'm going back to junior school. I can still sing today Bigeilior Gwyneth Gwyn, which, although we weren't in Wales, we were in Hemel Hempstead, which is not particularly close to Wales. A lot of the teachers are Welsh, because the Welsh are kind of, the Celts used to be the teachers of Europe, and the Welsh are no exception. And so a lot of the teachers in Hemel Hempstead were Welsh, and knowing that I was quarter Welsh, I took an interest in that, and in the choir that I was in, they prepared for us to sing a Welsh song, right, to represent Broad Street School, as it was. And so my first languages that I learned were French and Welsh, and Welsh a bit from my grandfather, French from school, a little bit from my mother. I remember very much in the early days my mother encouraging me in the way of languages, because she must have kind of realised that I could do it quite well before I knew that I was particularly good at it. I suppose she kind of like cottoned on to the fact that I could pretty much impersonate the accent. I think impersonation, being able to do different accents, being able to talk like a Dane, for example. So I don't mean to make anything funny for you, but but to do different accents is part of the thing. I mean, your British English is very convincing, for example, so you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
She was saying to me, my mother was saying to me, would you like to help me with my stamp collection? And so I would be helping her do her stamp collection. She was a lifelong collector of stamps. And I would look at the stamps, and she would, we'd be looking at the stamps and what have you, and then she said, well, are you going to collect stamps? And I said, you know what, Mother? As pieces of paper, little pieces of paper go, I didn't say it in those words, because I probably didn't have that degree of kind of like turn of phrase at that age, but what I think I said was tantamount to, the little pieces of paper are okay, but I mean, you can collect them, you can collect the stamps, and I'll collect the words which are on the stamps, because that was what was really interesting, seeing, Magyar Posta and things like that, and all of that stuff. Of course I didn't know that's how you pronounced it there. But just to be able to look at it and imagine and to play with the words that were on the stamps. Because because that was like a mini Eurovision Song Contest, but worldwide, not just Europe. You know, that was a worldwide little word contest. Who could make the most interesting word appear on something? And of course, there were different alphabets and things like that. It was mind blowing. You know, so you know, at the age of like 7 or 8. So I think that that would be, you know, the Jesuits, which is not a society that I'm a member of. The Jesuits do have this saying, give me a child of 7 and I'll give you the man. Yeah. I don't know whether that was Loyola. I think maybe Loyola came up with that one, or anyway one of his other loyalty card friends. Terrible. Even when I'm not being Hooliganov, I tend to make these outrageous puns. But I would say that the age of 7 is when I kind of first went in that direction. But it wasn't the only direction that I was pulling in at that age, because my other big passion in life was pardon, I shouldn't cough on the podcast. But the other big passion of my life was animals and the natural world in general. I like plants, but most of all I like animals. And of those animals, of the animal kingdom, that's not very good, is it? I'm going to get some of that coffee you kindly made me.
Well, don't worry about it.
I've got to make sure I drink it nice and quietly, so that the sound of making the coffee doesn't appear on the podcast. And here we go, make it nice and quietly. That's better.
Back to regular programming.
Yes, back to our regular programming. So what was I talking about?
You're talking about getting to the animal kingdom and
yes, that's right.
Life.
That was what I was particularly interested in, was like fish and birds. Mm-hmm. So I think at the age of about 7 or 8, I was all about birds, and I was all about fish and all the other animals as well. But I could never really, and I thought I might want to be a biologist, or at least an ichthyologist. Mm-hmm. Which is not an theologist, like somebody who turns himself into a god and then studies himself, but an ichthyos being fish, yes. I thought I was going to be that. Yeah, I thought I had a lovely collection of tropical fish. I'd been a fish keeper, really uninterrupted since the age of about 9 years of age. I had all kinds of. My mother used to get very annoyed with me because I used to add more and more and more little tanks in and everything, and in the end she got annoyed with me, and she chucked out some of my fish down the toilet sometimes when I bred too many, you know, and I got very upset with that. But nevertheless, yeah, we'll probably cut that bit out. It's not very nice. But basically, I thought I might want to be a biologist. Mm-hmm. The problem came eventually. So all the time I was going two directions. One was the languages, the other was the fish, especially, you know, tropical fish. And by the time I got to be 14, I knew all the important fish studiers in the British Museum and the university, what have you. I knew them all. And a lot of them had been very kind to me and had encouraged me in the interest. And I had even written some stuff about fish keeping, and certainly, yeah, I was quite known as a junior member of a lot of fish keeping societies. I travelled around Britain going to fish shows and things like that. More active then on the fish side than on the languages side, but the languages side was just going on the whole time as well. At school I started to do German. After I did Latin one year, but I was the year that the year's Latin that we had in my school was the same year as when I was really, really, really naughty. Mm. So, I mean, the Latin teacher really hated me. I used to disrupt all of his lessons. You know, he would be trying to teach about Roman catapults, whereas I was actually making them with a comb and an elastic band and a pencil. Yes. You know, so it's he hated the fact that at the end of the year I thought to myself, yeah, I've got a Latin exam coming up. And I grabbed the Latin primer, some people say primer, but I say primer, and I just learned it. I thought, well, I better go through this and revise it. And I thought, well, I don't really know any of this. I remember he was talking about this and this and this. But instead of revising it, yeah. I basically taught myself Latin from the primer,
right,
or primer, or whatever you want to call it. So then his exam comes, And his worst student, the one that's been the bane of his life all year, gets 97%. 97% ma. Yeah? So he was really, really, really annoyed with me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? So so he actually wrote in my report for that year, I am really annoyed that this student got 97% in my exam after being so disruptive all through the year. The headmaster then, in his summing up at the bottom, then wrote in passing, I don't know what kind of teacher writes exams so that his worst student gets 97%. The headmaster actually told him in the report card, so it was absolutely amusing actually. But I thought, well, this is actually quite fun. Yeah? But then I'd chosen to do German the year after. I didn't want to be the bane of that guy's life anymore. But I started to learn German. That's when I met a really important influence in my life. I'd say David Morgan. Mm-hmm. He's now back in the UK, but for many years he gave up teaching shortly after teaching me. That's how much I kind of drained him, I think. But I, in this case, it was actually out of interest. I kept asking him questions. And he taught me a lot of the stuff. He was a remarkably perceptive chap. He went to Lingala shortly afterwards to escape, to Lingala, to Congo. He taught Lingala. He basically, what he did, he went with the Wyclifians. They translate the Bible into languages which haven't had them translated before, and he was the guy on the Lingala team, which is actually quite a big language in Congo. But they didn't have the Bible. He was doing, shoebox and all that stuff, and getting, Lingala literate and getting it all, in these. If you want to look up David Morgan, then just put it together with Lingala, you'd find him on the internet. Well, he was my German teacher. I don't know if he still speaks German now. He probably gets it muddled up with sort of Bantu languages. But the thing is that he actually really did emphasise, if you want to learn a language, you got to learn it. Right. I'm the teacher, but I'm not going to teach you. You're the one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create conditions where you can learn from me, but you've got to be the one who drives the process. You're going to have to take control of it. He actually taught this because he was a real guy. I mean, he was a real person that was all about languages. Because, as you know, if you go and afterwards do field work, in the field with a language which doesn't even have literacy, then that means that's where the wheat is separated for the chaff. That makes you definitely one of the more wheaty ones. Yeah,
so you teach yourself for that language.
Yeah, you've got to teach yourself. So he what he was, and there was another guy as well. Was the other German teacher? His name was Mike Smith. He was also of the same opinion. I think I was more influenced by David Morgan, but Mike Smith as well. He was saying the same things. And the pair of them, they really gave me a lot of input.
Wow.
They were very, very good, very passionate, language-loving German teachers, and they gave me not just the German, but the understanding of how to go about teaching yourself a language, which I then soon afterwards started to put into practice because I wanted to learn Russian. Mm-hmm. Just like Alex was just talking about now, he found it difficult to get into it. I actually didn't, probably because of the good input that I had from those guys. I found I just was eating it.
When did you get that inspiration from to learn Russian?
To learn Russian? Well, that's interesting. It was actually 1980, and that was the year when Moscow they'd gone into Afghanistan, and everybody was up in arms about that. It was the time when it was the protect and survive era, where you had to build yourself a nuclear shelter under your toilet or something like that, and expect the 4-minute warning any time that the Russians were going to come and invade us.
The Cold War.
Yeah, the Cold War was at its peak, and people were very nervous about this, and at the same time we had the Moscow hosting the Olympic Games. Okay. I was a fan, of ladies' gymnastics, as people are usually about the age of 14, 15, not necessarily for sporty reasons.
Right. It's very flexible.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's a very flexible approach to sport. And I noticed that a lot of like people like Olga Korbut and other people, a lot of them were coming out of Russia. I thought, and I noticed that they tended to be pretty good-looking girls. So I thought to myself, well, that wouldn't hurt. And also the fact that they were, it was like forbidden territory. The Cold War was
Right.
at its highest. It was forbidden territory. Yet you didn't expect to even get to meet any of them. Yeah, but you wanted to be able, if you were in that situation where you ever did meet one, that you'd be able to show, I mean, just ordinary Russia, which I've since have spent years and years in, yeah, seemed in those days to us like North Korea practically now, and of course not even North Korea doesn't have that because North Korea just has a slightly different dialect to South Korea. So if you want to learn Korean, it's easy enough, as far as access is concerned. Whereas there, access to real ones. I'll tell you this: I taught myself Russian from a series of teach yourself books. I went from material to material. If I didn't understand an explanation in one book, I'd get it from another, and the linguaphone. Which was, in those days, Pimsleur wasn't even invented. So, or if it was, then just for the first few languages.
Sure.
So, linguaphone was the big thing. Nowadays, I think you can still get linguaphone, but it's not quite so popular. It's definitely kind of got a dated ring to it, linguaphone. And sorry if anybody's a big linguaphone fan or even working for linguaphone listening to this, but the fact is that linguaphone was bigger then in the sort of landscape of learning materials than it is now. They definitely lost out to some of the ones coming out along later, but there's nothing new about companies being in that situation.
No.
But I certainly have a depth linguaphone because the materials, I use linguaphone materials for several languages, for many years in fact, it has the same problem as other things have, in that you tend to get the same scenarios coming up again and again, a la Pimsleur.
Go to the hotel and check in.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. So that gave me the accent. But I was really fortunate because Russian Language and People kicked off, which was again leading up to the Olympics. Lots of people were going to be visiting Russia from England for the first time over and around the Olympics. The first actual time when I listened to Russian and decided that I wanted to learn it, I'd been a shortwave radio enthusiast as well, just listening to these languages without really understanding them. And there was one particular language, one particular spot on the dial where I liked the sound of the language very much. And I wasn't sure what language it was. I thought it might be Russian, but I wasn't sure it was Russian.
Sure.
I thought because I heard that language quite a lot, it was probably Russian because, it came up with that frequency that would be right for it to be Russian and not just a minor language. And I thought to myself, well, how to find out what this language is? So I went downstairs. There was just at one point where the presenter would say every so often, "Говорит радиостанция Родина," like that, yeah. And I just went downstairs at that point from my room and said to my mother, "Говорит радиостанция Родина," and my mother said, "Я говорю по-русски," because it turns out my mother she'd tried to learn Russian.
Wow.
While I was in the womb.
Okay.
Yes.
So you started early then?
It looks like that. Because, but she didn't really manage it. I mean, she didn't really take it beyond that. It was just, during her maternity leave, as it were, from being a teacher, she went on a Russian course and she was doing a bit, but she didn't take it very far. And I thought to myself as well, look, now mother, I'm going to show you that I can do something even. I was always very competitive with my mother. And so if that's something you tried to do but you couldn't do, but you're interested in seeing if I can do it, well, I'll show you that I can do it. Yeah. So I went and I got the book, and actually it was a toss-up because Aventura, which was a good BBC, was also running in the TV at the same time, and I was watching that in the morning. I was also watching Nai Zindagi Naya Jivan, which was for the Asian community, to try and get them, to understand the country that they'd come to, So this was in Hindi,
okay.
Hindi, Urdu, kind of Hindustani kind of thing there. So I just listened to that as well, and pick up bits of Urdu or Hindi from that. Nai Zindagi is new life, new way, yeah. So it's funny how now I'm doing Farsi, and Zindagi is also Farsi.
Right.
This is the same words from my early childhood coming up again in new languages. It's interesting, but that's a by the by. But I actually went to the bookshop when I'd saved up a bit of money. I went to W.H. Smith's, which was and is the main bookseller of England, and I was planning to buy a Ventura course book, but they didn't have it. They did have a book called Russian Made Simple, not Mastering Russian, Russian Made Simple. I bought that, but it was actually too, I started off with that one, and then I discovered I was making progress a little bit too fast and already, still not really feeling much meat there.
Right.
I actually then bought an additional book which was Teach Yourself Russian, not the one they've got now, the old one by Michael Fruin.
Okay.
It's got some mistakes in it, but didn't know that at the time. It just seemed like a brilliant book, the way that it took through the language, and it was a very, very well constructed, almost a model for constructing a course the way it should be done, really. And it's a pity that Teach Yourself have dumbed down a lot of their courses that used to be really very good. But you can still get them if you look on Amazon, secondary market on Amazon, you can still get them from time to time.
So they were simply too basic, or what? Did they not go too much in depth?
Which one?
Like
the Russian Made Simple?
No, the new
ones.
ones.
The new ones.
What?
There's a definite. I'm not sure that. I would say this, just like O levels, which we used to have when I was a lad.
Right.
Yes, they used to have about 2,000 words.
Right.
And now it's gone to GCSEs, and if you look at the GCSE, vocabulary lists that are available online, they almost invariably tend to have about 1,200 words.
Okay.
Yeah. So as you can see, between 2,000 words and 1,200 words, you might say, well, that's not a very big difference, because you've still got to. But also, there are a couple of big major grammar points, like things like pluperfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get on to if we take, for example, French as an example, you don't really start dealing with the subjunctive anyway at O level, and you don't really start dealing with passé simple, the past historic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't deal with that anyway at or didn't deal with that anyway at O level. But anything like j'aurais dû, that like a past conditional, you would certainly already have covered at O level, or j'avais été, I had been, yes.
Right.
You would certainly have covered that at O level. I remember covering that at O level, and about 2,000 words of vocabulary. Yeah, and then you don't have those two cases at GCSE usually.
Right.
Yeah, you tend to have a lot of getting around the language by using kind of like contextual adverbial phrases of time to kind of make up for the differences, and you tend to have only 1,200 words of vocabulary, which obviously, as long as it's frequentative, you might say, well, okay, 1,200 words of the most frequent vocabulary is going to carry you quite a long way anyway, and it's an argument. But it's also a different level of work, a different level of preparation, and I think that the difference between the old Teach Yourself book, the old level Teach Yourself books had roughly that. They used to have about 2,000 words, and that the book which I'm talking about, the Michael Fruin book, had 2,000 words in.
Right.
Yeah, and if you look at a modern Teach Yourself book, they tend to have more like that kind of level of 1,200 words.
Right.
If you now look at colloquial, which is the Routledge or Routledge, I'm not even sure how people say that.
I don't know either.
To call myself a polyglot, I don't know even how to pronounce the prime. The others are available, but for me, the prime publisher of English language textbooks in foreign languages now probably is this Routledge or Routledge, because I'm tempted by their products a lot, and they kind of make sense. And the colloquial, like for example, I got colloquial faster. I did. You know me, I'm always counting things.
Yeah.
So I did count. There's 2,000 in there.
Oh really?
Yeah, which is good.
Right.
So that's pretty good. Yesterday, I bought a German book, a vocabulary builder that that will add another 3,000. So I've got my work cut out for me now in terms of vocabulary, because I discovered that's the biggest issue is to really build a decent sized vocabulary.
Right.
And grammar. This is Gareth. Were you Gareth?
Yeah.
Gareth said this. Dr. Popkins.
Yes.
He's probably already on one of your podcasts.
No, not yet. But
you have to get him.
I'll
He's
get him on
brilliant.
this
He's
week. Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, I'm
He
a
was
big fan.
he was a small guest on a segment in one, but I haven't had the chance to sit down with him for a full episode.
Oh, do. He's a clever guy.
Yeah.
Is Gareth. So he was saying yesterday, and I can't remember why I brought Gareth up now.
It was the grammar versus vocabulary.
Yeah, he says grammar comes to an end. Which is remarkable. It kind of was amazing when I heard him say that, because actually I've said that. I hope he wasn't nicking it from me, but I'm sure I've said that before, that grammar comes to an end as well. And exactly the same way. I'm sure he came to that conclusion quite independently from me. He has all the apparatus to have done so anyway. So I'm sure he did. But a lot of us, I'm sure, come to the same conclusion. Grammar's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Yeah? So grammar, if you do like let's say 40 pages of an exercise book, going through writing out the big grammar stuff, anything further than that is probably related to specific words anyway.
Right.
So then when you're doing a word, let's say you're doing a word let's say you're doing German, so you write a Hauptwort or a noun, yeah, you're going to write der, die, das next to it, or just masculine, feminine, neuter next to it. Yeah. If you're doing your lovely language, Danish, you're going to write whether it's common case or outer space case or whatever it is.
Neuter.
Neuter or uter. Yeah. Neuter.
Yeah, I think they call it neuter. Yeah.
Yeah, but neuter and uter.
We call it
neutrum and outrum or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's basically neutral gender and no gender.
Neutral gender and no gender.
And
sums up the youth of today, really. Sorry, better cut that bit out as well. But basically, yeah. You'd write down what it was, yes.
Right.
So you write hus et, yeah.
Yeah.
Bil en,
yeah.
And so you don't get the loft et, is it?
That's true.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
You write them together, yeah.
Yeah.
So and then when you come to like putting a verb down, yeah, you don't just think if it's et telefonere, you don't have to worry about it, because you know that these modern ones are all soft.
Right.
Yeah. But if you come to like swimmer. Svommer, yes, Jeg har svommer.
Jeg har svømmet.
Swimmer.
Yeah.
Okay, righto. So in a sense, in Danish, it doesn't matter so much, because whatever you say, it's going to sound the same when you actually say it.
Right.
But that's how you learn it. Yeah, you put three spaces down. Yeah, you don't have to worry about conjugating it in Danish. But you'd want to put if you've got a strong verb, you stick down here that the verb is strong. You'd have present, you'd have simple past, and you have compound and past participle, all next to each other, and learn them together.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how you put them into a vocabulary book. Yeah, like the goal list method, which I think we're going to come on to in due course.
Yeah.
So that's basically.
But isn't it?
That's the big part of it, yeah. Because that's the big part of it is actually the vocabulary, right. and then together with the vocabulary, the grammar specifically linking to that vocabulary article. In English, for example, when you learn an adjective, you might want to consider whether that adjective can be put into its degrees, comparative and superlative degree.
Yes.
Yeah? The superlative degree is the most superlative of all of the degrees. So you need to know whether you can't say, for example, that something is the superlativist.
Right.
Yes. But that's quite clear, because superlative's got 4 syllables, and you won't find that many 4-syllable adjectives which you can still put est on the end and not sound like you're making a joke.
Right.
Yeah? So and then you've got the small ones like easy, yeah, easier, more easily, and what have you.
Yes.
But it can cause problems if you don't learn it properly.
Of course.
It can cause problems. I mean, even somebody with very competent English, almost native English. Who was giving a lecture earlier in this conference, did make that mistake. So used the wrong degree with an adverb or an adjective in English, and the way round it is to actually, when you learn the adjective, learn the degrees with that, if it's going to be an issue in that language. In German, it's less of an issue, because even if something's really long, you can put est on the end, or st on the end, and still make it, and they're not so bothered about it. But in English, if you because there's more diglossia between the Romance way of doing things and the Germanic way of doing things, it kind of matters, It kind of makes you sound silly if you use the wrong form of degree in the adjective. So if you're doing English, that's what you'd want to focus on. Whereas if you were doing German, you might say, okay, that's all right. As long as I've got gut, besser, best, then I'm all right. Because the rest of them, even schlimm, schlimmer, schlimmest, and you have der dårlig wärst or something. How do you have?
Dårliger værst, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
They're kind of strange, actually. But the Danish language is very strange.
Yeah, but a lot of languages, the words for good and bad have got irregular degrees.
And Hungarian as well. Yeah.
And even what you said, yol or yol.
Yol, like job.
Jobbik, the political party. But the other political parties are available. But the Slavonic languages, yes, you have хороший, lushi, same lushi or nai lushi, and it doesn't sound anything like хороший, and in Polish you've got the same, even though you don't have хороший, you have dobry, but you've still got lepie, which sounds a bit like lushi, but it's related to a Southern Slavonic word lepi, which is beautiful, in South Slavic. Nasz język je vrlo lep, is Serbo-Croatian as it used to be when I learned it. Speakers say lep. Hvala lijepo. Lijepo is the Croatian. So pretty, thank you, bitte schön, or danke schön. I don't know why thanks and pleases have to be pretty.
I don't know.
People even say in English, pretty please,
Hungarian, thank you beautifully.
Nagyon szépen.
Köszönöm szépen.
Köszönöm szépen. It's funny, isn't it, really?
You say beautiful city, thank you beautifully.
Yes, if the listeners know why,
please write to us.
Thank yous are beautiful. Please give your theories in the comments below, and we'll give them all due attention.
Yeah, please write to the show at, we don't have an address, BBC Studios, whatever they used to say.
Yes, the thumbs up anyway.
London N1.
Yes. N1?
I don't know. W1, I guess. I wanted to.
You can have W1, yes.
I want to also comment a little bit on the grammar versus vocabulary, because when I started learning my first independent foreign language, I was also very focused on grammar, and I thought it was very important. And it's only in the last year or so that I really realized that if you're learning a language mainly for communication reasons, which I guess is a big reason for many people, it's very rare that grammar is preventing comprehension.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
But vocabulary is almost certainly going to prevent comprehension.
Yeah.
If you don't know a word, sometimes you can explain your way out of it. Yeah. But if you're just learning a word, if you're just learning a language, it's very hard to explain around a word if you don't know it. That's cool.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine, still friends till today, but this happened something like 23 or 4 years ago, was driving in the car and using the opportunity to really learn English. Well, this was in Poland, and he said, one of my teachers says you don't really need to learn a lot of vocabulary. Focus on the grammar. Don't worry too much about learning a lot of vocabulary. Just have a bit, but get the grammar right. And I said, well, why ever does your teacher think that? So because she says you can work it out by context most of the time. I said, you know what? I think your teacher's an imbecile.
Do you know what that word means?
And he said, what, you mean you think my teacher's like a genius or something? No, quite the opposite. But you see, it's a great illustration. If you don't know the word.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. I think it's true. And you can always, if you just know what each individual word is, you can always get a sentence out where the other person is eventually going to understand what you're talking about.
This is it. Yeah.
Even for complicated languages like Russian and Hungarian, they will get it out of context if you know the words.
If you know the right word. For example, let's say you're at a cafe, And let's say you're in Poland. Do you know Polish?
No, barely.
Well, let's use a Hungarian example.
Okay.
Yeah? Let's say you could say in beautifully grammatical Hungarian, yeah, please give me an apricot juice. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But if you use the wrong fruit, yeah, and say Borodsk le and not Usi Borodsk le,
Right.
yeah, you're gonna get the wrong juice.
Right.
Yeah. No matter how nicely you say it, no matter how much wonderful Hungarian, Finno-Ugric grammatical analysis you put into it, if you don't put the Usi before the Barack Obama le,
That's true.
yeah. Then you ain't gonna get apricot juice.
Right, you're gonna get peach.
You're gonna get peach. You know
That's
that.
also quite lovely, but yeah.
Peach is also good, but not if you wanted. If you wanted peaches, yeah. You'd want to ask for it.
Yeah.
You'd say Mzgeldov over here.
Oh no! Too soon.
Yes.
I don't know. No, but I find the vocabulary is infinitely more important, and especially if you're learning European languages, the grammar is very forgiving. I mean, English you can basically get away with knowing zero grammar and still be understood.
So you've got various kinds of ways in which you can break up a language, and especially this is clear for a European language. Once you get into something like Japanese or Chinese, you can break it up in even different ways. So you can have, are you going to do the characters or this kind of reading, or are you going to save that bit till later? Are you going to take it in different layers? And you can layer it differently when it comes to those languages. But if we're talking about European languages, you've got different layers anyway. You've got the kind of layer where you get to be able to use the sound system. And a very good way of just being able to use the sound system is to just use Google Maps and travel around the Google Maps in that country and recognise even your own street the way it's written, or places how they're then written, and then you get to see the conventions of how they're written in that different language, especially if it has a different alphabet, to see the conventions of how they're. I sometimes take Google Maps for a drive in another language version, and then you get to see how that way of writing copes with places There's actually an interesting way of doing it, or you can just simply write out, if you're dealing with Cyrillics or Greek letters for the first time, or even Arabic letters, whether in the Arabic version or the Farsi or the Urdu version, you then just write out even English sentences in that alphabet. You can even keep yourself a secret diary if you're into that kind of thing. Where you actually use that alphabet.
Code language,
yes. Just to write out English, just until you get comfortable with that. You don't even. So are we okay with the time?
Yeah, we're good on time. Yeah.
Okay. So you don't actually need to worry too much about whether it's connected with the language at all.
Right.
Just it's just another writing system. Yeah. You could in theory learn Gurmukhi script and not know a word of Punjabi.
Right.
Yeah. So and use it fairly fluently for English.
Yeah. Me and Victor sometimes for laughs write Scandinavian in Cyrillic.
Yeah. He's done that with me as well.
Yeah, but we're not entirely sure what the convention is. Whether we should try to aim for to represent the letters or the sounds as precisely as possible. Because you can.
Well, the way to find out the Russian convention for using Cyrillics to handle Scandinavian words is exactly that. Google Maps. If you take the Google Maps, if you take the Google Maps and then you go to somewhere like Jönköping or whatever it might be,
and you see it,
and then you actually see how they're gonna actually put that into Cyrillics. And usually it's gonna be pretty phonetic. Yeah, they like to do things phonetically, especially with Serbians. Or Serbian will do it phonetically, but also the way in which they regard it can differ between one Cyrillic using language and another. So that if you quite apart from the fact that the ammunition that they've got differs, because some of the letters of Russian don't appear. The closest is Bulgarian to Russian, but even there you've got tvrdy znak, hard sign, is actually a full vowel in Bulgarian. Yeah, so it's just like an like your unstressed A or O in Russian still shows you its historical look, you know,
Wow.
in Bulgarian you've just got that hard sign in
didn't
there.
know
It's
that.
got a full vowel. It's not just a hard sign,
Right.
which is why if you look at even Bulgaria, the second letter
Right.
is the hard sign.
Yeah.
So it's
Don't use it much more.
yeah, it's used an awful lot more. Yeah. So when you look at if you look at the Google map in Cyrillics, you're not just looking at a Google map in Cyrillics. You're looking at a specific convention for looking at, let's say, Danish
Right.
town names or what have you that'll apply in Russian if you're looking in Russian. But then if you turned it to Bulgarian, it'd be something else as well. Even though it's Cyrillics the whole time. Yeah.
Because they have a different understanding of the sounds involved.
Well, that's right, and again between Farsi and Arabic, yeah, Farsi tends to be pretty religious about anything which comes from Arabic and is related to religion. Then it gets pretty faithfully translated into Farsi. From what I can, and don't anybody think I'm an expert on this because I'm just beginning. But I took an interest in this and try to work out how this is with Farsi, and this is what I found out, that things from Arabic get transliterated into Farsi fairly faithfully.
Right.
So that Arabic place names would probably be transliterated across into Farsi fairly much the same as they are in Arabic, so they're going to look the same. But as soon as you then get into a non-Arabic place, then those places, for example, if you were to look at the Farsi Google Maps, yeah, of a Danish place name, you're going to see that in Farsi they're going to look different to the way they look different in Arabic. There's going to be differences in that, even though you say, well, they're both using Arabic, they've got different take on it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So this whole phonology is one level, and you don't even need the language for it. Yeah. And listening to the sounds of the language, I call it audio front loading. In Goldlist method, obviously it's a written method. Yeah. So before you do that, you need to have developed an inner voice. I don't really recommend, unless somebody knows roughly how the language sounds and already has an inner voice for the language.
Right.
I don't recommend going in raw into fully blown goal listing.
Right.
I mean, for myself now, I'm using goal listing from pretty early on, but I will have done, a Michel Thomas or a Paul Noble course. I mean, there's not many Paul Noble courses. There aren't that many Michel Thomas courses. There's quite a few more Pimsleur courses, but even they don't go for everything you might want to learn. But that's where I'd start, the audio only.
Right.
And if I haven't got one of those three above mentioned courses, well, then I'd go into trying to find something locally made. I mean, Bulgarian doesn't even have a Pimsleur, but I found a decent Bulgarian audio only course, which I listened to for a bit, but I didn't take Bulgarian too seriously because I was just going there for a short project, and I never really needed it other than that, and wasn't particularly bothered about having. I don't need to learn every language. I found that with Bulgarian, for example, if you know a few Slavonic languages, you go to Bulgaria, as long as you know roughly how it works and you know what to expect, that it's got the definite article tacked on the end and things like that, and it doesn't have all the cases and it doesn't have all the tenses the same. So you tend to be able to follow it quite easily.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't take Bulgarian learning very seriously, but I have got that course anyway, just in case I ever need it. But in the main audio front loading, that's the thing. So then you get your inner voice. You know how the language is supposed to sound, and you can start to impersonate it, and you get your mouth in the right shape to make it. Yeah. Which is very important.
Right.
Yeah. Because you've done all the repeat after me stuff, which happens in Pimsleur. Or okay, you know how to say that, and you know how to say that. So now say this, which means you take a bit of the first, a bit of the second, stick them together, and you've got a new sentence.
Yeah.
And you've got to say it. Yes. So I'm all in favour of, doing it by the rules, using the pause button as I say and everything. And you'll get a lot out of that right at the beginning, before you've even looked at the writing system.
Yeah.
It's really a good idea to have done like a full Pimsleur course, more than one of. You could do Michael Thomas first, and then or Michel Thomas, then do the Pimsleur. And if you've got more than one Pimsleur, do the lot. Do whatever audio only you can get your hands on.
Yeah, just really get the impression of the language.
Inner voice that you can get.
Right.
Yeah? And then when you actually get into the goal list, you're not distracted because you already know pretty much. Oh yes, I know this word. I know what it sounds like, and so I can write it down this way. And not start saying it with an English accent. My inner voice is already telling me. Don't say it this way. Say it that way. Yeah? And then you can start goal listing from from a good perspective. Yeah.
Right.
So normally, I mean, depending on how good of an idea I'd have about how the language sounds, it might be 3 months from starting the language before I actually started the goal list.
Right.
I mean, for Farsi, I didn't start until I'd been, gone through the whole peninsula,
Right.
and that took me a while.
Well, they have probably 90 lessons, right? 3 levels of
The Farsi,
30.
I don't think they have 3 levels of Farsi.
Okay.
But there's certainly a lot of. I think that they have Farsi 30 lessons,
Right.
and they have Dari 30 lessons. But I didn't want to mix up too much, so I just stuck to Iranian Persian, and basically did that, which seemed to take a while.
They are quite dragged out, I find.
Yeah.
You need to really have a lot of mental focus to listen, because they pack a lot of things in those 20-30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, they do, and it's worth the money to buy Pimsley, because, but it's not worth the money to buy it stupidly.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't use it properly.
Well, yeah. If you don't use it properly, you're not going to get the benefit from it. That's one thing. But also, if you buy it from the Pimsley's own shop,
Right.
you're paying 3 times as much as you would if you were buying it
Oh,
for
yeah.
credits on Audible.
I remember
I
you
think
said
I've said
that,
this
yeah.
a few times before, and I'll say it again just in case
Yeah.
that wasn't the
It's a
bit
good
that got
tip.
resumed before. But definitely Audible is your friend.
Yeah.
And just like I start with audio, I also end with audio. So at the end of a goal list project, when I've taken everything as far as I'm going to take it, the way to really activate a really good accent, a really good intonation with the language, and to get going with all the vocabulary that you've now learned, once the goal list project is over, I would go back again to audio-based development at the end of the goal list as well, but this time on actual literature, actual really live
Right.
stuff that the natives are listening to, whether it's internet radio, which is one thing.
Yeah, that's widely available.
Yes, widely available. I used to be a shortwave freak. That was internet radio before the internet.
Yeah.
You needed a nice long aerial, so I had thankfully a very nice long aerial, and I could pick up quite an awful lot of stuff from my bedroom as a kid. But quite remarkable what you could actually get.
Yeah.
But and I was sending off, DX cards to all over the world, and kids these days don't know what DX cards are. But basically, the internet is very good for giving you lots of audio.
Yeah.
These days, so you've got YouTube as well, where you can watch films in the language.
Right.
You can listen to the radio, on the internet. But best of all is if you can grab audio books
Right.
from the literature of that language, which has been translated as well into your language. And then there's something that I do which is called, the way that I've developed it, I call it combination or combined drill, where you start with the listening. I'm doing it, for example, with the Die Schlafwandler by Hermann Bloch. Mm-hmm. He's a post-war German writer. Pretty well respected. This is decent literature. There are others, people like Berlin, what have you, Christoph Wolff, lots of post-German, 1950s, 1960s, really classy, Günter Grass,
Yeah.
really classy German writers, really good literature they came up with. I'm not talking about the stuff you buy in German airports, which they like to take the people who decide what literature is available in a German airport. I'd like to smash their heads their faces against my kneecap.
Right.
But I seriously would.
But is that a
at
German-specific problem? Because I
it's the
think
worst
most
here.
airports are quite poorly stocked.
They are, but I mean the difference between what they could be reading and what
Right.
they are reading seems to me the most ausgeprägt for the Germans.
Right.
Yeah? The quality of the stuff which they could have.
Yeah.
Yeah? They could be reading Grillparzer. Yeah?
Right.
Goethe, Schiller.
Yeah.
Yeah?
There are tons.
And they read the most atrocious rubbish.
Like the Harry Potter of German language.
Well, even Harry Potter is good in comparison with a lot of the stuff they seem to be reading. But I don't know, the airport literature is really trash, and I've seen these machines that have got books in some even the waiting areas, and if you're lucky, if one position in the whole lot is even, something that an examiner would ever want to set questions on. Which is the hallmark of what amounts to good literature. If an examiner would like to set a question in that book, or you wouldn't be embarrassed, if the examiner says, with respect to post-war German literature of the German Democratic Republic, how do authors deal with the question of female role in society? Would you be embarrassed in citing this book in the essay? If so, it's not literature.
That's good. Yeah,
that's a bit of a snobbish approach, but there you go. That's the result of the kind of educational system that I went through in the end. So, as in the end, the reason why, going back to what I said at the beginning, the reason why I didn't become a fish when I went to university, why I didn't end up doing fish studies. I still keep fish even till today. I've still got a nice collection, but the reason why I did languages was I kind of saw that even with the fish, what I could get particularly interested in about them was that I knew all their names, and I knew all their Latin names, and I knew what the Latin names meant.
Right.
Yeah, and where they'd come from. So actually, I thought I was doing biology, but when it came to actually, how does the fish work internally? Where's its liver? Where's its this and the other? Some people were getting interested in, why does this fish eat that and the other fish eats that? Well, this one's liver can do this, that one's liver can't do it. So that was all boring for me.
Right.
Yeah, I tried to get into it, I couldn't. Yeah, but the fact that Ancestris dolichopterus, the dolichopterus means long wings because the fins look like long wings, etc. So that was very, very interesting. I could never get enough of it. So in the end, it kind of like dawned on me that I wasn't a biologist.
Right.
I was still a linguist even when I was being an ichthyologist.
Right.
So and that's why I went down that in the end. So then I went to Cambridge and did modern and medieval languages. I did a whole bunch of different languages from the past, as well as the modern Russian and German. I wanted to know how those languages had changed over time. People say evolved over time. It's not necessarily an evolution, but it's certainly a change.
Right.
And so.
Well, evolution kind of signifies an improvement, doesn't it?
Well, yes.
In a way.
So what really happens with languages is
they're just different. They're not necessarily better.
Well, what happens is that with languages, it's funny because the grammar usually gets simpler.
Right.
The more adventures that language has had rubbing up against other languages, because of the various things that happen in history, with real people going out and knocking the 7 types of shit out of somebody else. Yeah. So usually, or in commerce or whatever else, they're rubbing up against other languages. The grammars get simpler the whole time. Yeah. The phonologies get simpler the whole time, but the vocabularies grow.
Right.
Yeah. And so so you get the simpler the language is, the bigger vocabulary it seems to have.
Right.
And where's that going to end? At the moment, if you look at Mandarin Chinese, which is what you've got left after, a huge area called China, bigger than Europe, really, bigger than the European Union part of Europe, and with more people in it, over a longer history than we've had, with more wars and all these battles that we in the West, we don't understand Chinese history. We can't pronounce half the people you need to know to understand Chinese history. Yeah.
Who?
Yes, him as well. So basically, we're in a bit of a bind when it comes to understanding it, but we can see the effect of it.
Right.
Mandarin Chinese is a language where you're down to about 400 different syllables that they can even pronounce.
Right.
And in that, they've got a huge number of different signs, different hundreds of thousands of different kanjis. I tend to use the Japanese word for it, but Hanzi, which were developed, thousands and thousands of years ago, even thousands of years before Christ. And when it comes to the amount of vocabulary that they've got, just by putting a few of these together in each case, Mandarin Chinese has a massive vocabulary, yeah. which covers every area of human experience and even words which we don't even know exist.
Right.
Yeah. About certain of the areas, there's certain spices and bits of their medicine and what have you that we wouldn't even be able to talk about
Right.
without reference to Chinese words. Yeah. It's huge, but they only have 400 odd different ways to form a syllable.
Right.
And they've got to fit all of that in there. Well, where does that end?
Yeah.
You end up with millions and millions of words, but they all sound exactly the same because the language is devalued in such a way that you can only say one single grunting syllable.
Right.
But depending on how you then say it, it could mean any one of a million different things.
Right.
I mean, that's the conclusion. I mean, reductio ad absurdam.
Sure.
Yeah, that's where languages end up when you keep on going. So where did they start? Well, they start with just a few words, obviously.
Yeah.
But with a grammar so intensely complex that nobody would ever be able to learn them.
Right.
Yeah? Which then leads you to the idea. Well, how does the theory of evolution, as it applies, to most of biology, how do you then fit that together with this observable trend of language?
Yeah.
How does a language ever appear when it's immensely complicated at point of appearance? Yeah. And where's it all going to end if the number of things that people can say after it goes through this process is less and less and less, and where if you come back in a million years' time, you end up with one language that has one sound in it,
Right.
and means several million different things.
Yeah.
So it won't work anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So it's obviously Chinese does work perfectly well.
Yeah.
But where's the limit of what's possible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Going down that
Nobody knows.
line. Yeah. Well, yeah. We will find out. I suppose the work that people do with constructed languages,
Right.
is very valid. A way of finding out what are the limits for how much artificiality you can bring into a language and still have it work.
Right.
And there aren't that many constructed languages that have actually got bodies of speakers.
No.
I'm surprised at the amount of people that have got going on Klingon, for
Right.
example. I'm not really attracted to learn it, but
No.
but the other day there were a couple of people discussing in Klingon here.
Really?
Yeah, that language game that we had on the first evening there, with the fact Klingon being, well, the way that they've constructed it is very good at producing from abstract collections of letters very long words.
Oh, yes.
So on the linguistic anagram eBay game that Mirek did, some of the best options were coming from Finnish and Klingon.
Right.
There. So
That's a consonant.
yeah. An Italian, actually, strangely enough, was Cesco was bringing up some really very good ones from Italian. He actually won in the end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like from Countdown. I always liked that show.
Yeah.
In the UK. I was rubbish at the conundrums, but everything else was quite entertaining. But
But I don't know if I've answered your question.
I don't know if there was a question, but
Well, I think the question was how did
you
where
mean
did it all come from? Or
right,
what's
the
my
introduction, yes.
history, yeah. So all of that, coming together, doing a lot of languages at university, and then afterwards wanting to learn more, not wanting it to go away, because the reason why I did it was I was doing it anyway, and then taking interest in psychology. My first wife, before I married her, she was trying to become a nurse, and she was reading these psychology textbooks. I picked it up and read it and had some idea. But I was also trained to become an accountant after university.
Okay.
So and I got interested in these systems and these processes that you have in business to make sure that things are under control. And I thought, well, control is interesting. Certainly, control of the learning process is of particular interest. So I thought to myself, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and make sure that I've put together a system like this that you might find in a stock system,
Right.
an inventory system. And in fact, that's the first name of the goal list system when I first used it. Was I called it LIDS, which was lexical inventory and distillation system, because I had the idea of distilling already from
Right.
before, and the idea of keeping it, numbering it like an inventory. Yeah, so that was it. It was called lexical inventory and distillation system. So LIDS was what I first called it.
That's a really cool name.
Yeah, but is it? Oh, well, but I don't use it anymore anyway. And when I first did it, although I first did it in an exercise book, I didn't do it very well in it, and I tended to run out of space. But then I tried to do it on cards, which I did, and each of them had 25 on, so it was always a group of 25 words. But I just was moving up all the time, so that the page, which was of a different, and I used different coloured sheets from the photocopier, and I just made in Excel my basic thing, and then redid it, and then I was using these, and I had these A4 files, so it was A4 size. Do I mean A4? No, A5. A5.
So the half.
Yeah,
A4.
half. Yeah. So I got 2 out of a piece of A5.
Oh right, yes.
And I used to make like 100 at a time, because I'd fold them over. So then I put the holes in to put them in the file, and then so I'd get them 100 at a time.
Right.
But my headless was one colour paper, and then another colour paper was the other thing. And that's how I did it for many years, until I got fed up with all these pieces of paper, and then that's why I don't use flashcards. If you want to have a reasonable vocabulary, and by reasonable vocabulary I'm talking about thousands and thousands of words. I'm talking about hundreds of words. I'm talking about thousands of words. A real proper professional vocabulary of 15,000 words, as I like to look at it. Yeah, you're going to get 15,000 flashcards. I pity anybody with 15,000.
Where they're going to be stashed?
Well, they're going to go. The wind comes in through the window. They're going to be in proper problems.
Right.
So I don't do it. I've got. If I show you, for example, I mean, this is not going to look too good on the podcast. Yeah, but just in a book like this, I've hopefully got it with me. I didn't leave it on the bus, as it's got. I've got lots of, maybe 100 hours work in it now, I don't know, maybe more, I haven't counted. But there's the French one, yeah? And so a big fat book like this, I'm on 4,000, I'm just slightly over half it, I could get 7,000 words.
Yeah.
Yeah? I only need 2 books like this.
I see.
Yeah, of course. I only need 2 books like that to develop a 15,000 word. Well, that's certainly 15,000 line. In my case, I'm using sentences a lot of the time, so it's not 1 line equals 1 word. But I can do a 15,000. What would normally have to be 15,000 flashcards is just 2 books, and the wind can blow as hard as it likes when I'm in the park.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got a very neat handwriting.
Have I?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks very much.
I mean,
It certainly, doing this develops handwriting, of course,
people who
and it's very relaxing to do this.
Right. People who write very small usually write very. What's the correct word? It's hard to read. Let's put it that way. But yours is very. You have a very small handwriting, but it's very neat.
Have I done something wrong there? It seems to be
probably
still
still.
working.
We've got the fail safes. So you developed the goal list, or you just came up with it one day because you wanted to learn vocabulary.
Well, I mean, I was using various techniques anyway, like vocab books, but and I discovered that the vocab book was good, but I discovered that the best way of working through a vocab book was to write out again what I didn't know, and to leave the bits that I did know. But then there was a question of how to actually structure that nicely, and the timing. Because the first mistake I made was to do it almost immediately.
Right.
Yeah? Whereas the way that what kind of got me to understand that you need to leave things 14 days.
Yeah, where did that come from?
That came, I mean, even, it comes from a certain natural cynicism. It came partly from the psychology textbooks, because from this I first discover about Ebbinghaus, from my first wife's psychology textbook, when she was becoming a nurse, and putting 2 and 2 together, really, and all the way people talk about things. I discovered that, and even going back to things that David Morgan had said at the beginning, because I think that he basically he planted some seeds of this even that early on, because if you get some of these courses, there are certain courses out there that are quite intense. And one of the things they tend to do is they say, you can have your money back up to 16 days afterwards. Yeah?
Right.
Well, the thing is that if people actually do the course, they keep, and they shove things in their short-term memory. Short-term memory will take an awful lot, you know?
Yeah.
It will take an awful lot.
I think anyone listening has tried cramming for an exam or...
Exactly, like my Latin exam back in the day, I got my 97%. That was done, I don't remember any of that.
Right.
Yeah? I don't remember, I think I remember Ancilla Grunionem Delectas, and that's about all I can remember, because I was envisaging this slave lady actually delectating the chef. But that's probably what made me remember it. But other than that, I can't remember any of that Latin.
But is that, just a quick side note, do you think that's a big reason why students fail to take really useful levels of a language out of school? Because their levels that they have on their exam paper is largely based on what they did the night before the exam?
Well, that's the problem is that people don't teach languages the way they should be taught. And the teacher... The language teacher in schools ought to be an empty seat,
right?
Yeah, replaced by somebody called the language self-tuition coach, yeah, where people actually teach these kids the way to teach themselves,
right,
and to become then lifelong learners if they wish to be of languages, or to use something like the Goldlist method to learn other things as well. It doesn't have to be the Goldlist method. Doesn't have to be for languages.
Right.
I tend to basically use it all the time for languages rather than these other things, because other things that are in my job, they tend to be subject to change.
You're
Whereas
right.
if you use this, you really are looking for putting things in the long term memory, because that's what that 14 days is about.
Right.
These language courses, which give you your money back if you don't like it within 14 days, because they know that over that time you're working on the short-term memory. After that, it starts to get forgotten,
Right.
and people get demotivated, and then they might want their money back, but always after 16 days they can't do it.
Right.
So things like the Paul Daniels method, which isn't very commonly used nowadays, or even I've seen Callan method used or advertised with, you can have it back after up to 16 days, you can have your money back, etc. And it looks jolly honest, but it's not. It's dishonest, because these people probably realise that up until that time you can cram an awful lot in, and then it's only going to fall out. So it means that everybody knows. A lot of people know that there's a 14-day. Oh golly, you've got a.
That's the fire alarm.
Well, this has been a great addition to your podcast.
Well,
we didn't do this intentionally.
Right. Well, I am a bit of a jinx when it comes to...
It's amazing, isn't it? The first time we did this, I crashed your computer.
Yeah.
And the second time, you
maybe
didn't have your SD card. And now we're doing it with telephones.
Right.
Well,
I don't think there's anything on fire in the room, so...
have you got this girl around?
This... what?
This girl?
No.
Because I have it on good authority that this girl is on fire.
Ah. No, not quite.
I'm on fire. Okay.
So 14 days was because of the long-term memory.
Yeah, because if you've got the long-term memory, if anyone's still listening, because an hour's already gone by.
Oh no, they left the building. They thought the fire alarm was in there.
Okay, but I mean on the podcast.
Oh, right.
I'm still listening to this. But the thing about the long-term memory is, if you then leave it 14 days, it means, logically speaking, you're then saying, okay, everything that I wasn't going to learn for the long term, I've forgotten that.
Right.
Yeah? So those synapses have faded. Okay, whether they're completely gone or not, certainly, they're faded, they become not very usable. But then if after 14 days I then reinforce them, well, yes, I might then reinforce that synapse, but I know which synapses need to be reinforced, and my brain knows, because I left it over 14 days. It doesn't matter if it's a lot more than 14 days.
Right.
Even if I leave it for years, I don't lose much.
Sure.
Yeah. But it can't be less than 14 days, because I'll still be getting some of that short-term memory effect.
Right.
Which, this is what I did wrong at the beginning when I first started working with vocab books in a distilling kind of way. I was distilling them too soon.
Right.
and that came to the idea. Okay, if I distill them too soon, then I will basically think I've learned something and I haven't really learned it.
Right.
And it's only after a much longer time I'm going to find that. So the thing about the Goldlist method is that I do it so that, well, I work with big projects so that that's obviously the head list there. And when I first do it, I stick 1,000 words down at the beginning. Yeah. So so that usually takes a few weeks to do.
Yeah.
And then I've got something to I go back to the beginning again. So the first 1,000 you see, which I stuck down there. You can see at the end of the first 1,000. That's here. I've got B written on the 1,001. I've got B written.
Oh yeah.
Because I call that. I use the letters of the alphabet for batching. So the first 1,000 was batch A.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I make them smaller. So batch B then is 900. Yeah?
Oh.
So batch B.
Right.
Yeah. It gets me to 1,900. Batch C is 800 then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they become progressively smaller. So
because they get probably progressively harder as well.
Yeah,
the vocabulary more specialised.
Then when you add an 8, you're on 2,700.
Right.
Then when you add on 7 to that, you're on 3,400. Then you add on 6
right.
to that, you're on 4,000. You saw that it got to 4,000.
Yeah.
So that's where I am on this at the moment, which is at the end of batch E. Yeah, you're on 4,000 if you do it that way.
Right.
You have to do it that way. But I do it that way for the reason that I want enough material, so I've got time then for the bit at the beginning. Yeah, will already be ready to work on to distill, and then I go through and I distill that, and hopefully don't catch up within 2 weeks of myself going through.
Right.
That 1,000 is a nice big bulky amount, yeah. And anyway, I'm not just doing French; I'm doing other ones as well.
Sure.
So if I do catch up, I'll just put that to one side and get the cheap one out or whatever. That's not so. But French is the main project at the moment because I'm working for a French company with lots of opportunities to use it.
So you start out with making a big head list, so you have enough to work on the distillation.
Yes, so that I don't catch up with myself.
Right.
That's right. Exactly.
How do you normally balance between head listing and distilling? What's the
once I get to the end of the distilling that first batch, I then write the head list for the next batch.
Right.
Yeah. So I've got this sort of almost like triangular effect. I don't know if I've got a graph of it. Sometimes I use the back of these books to graph out my progress. But basically that's how I do it. Yes, you can see these tightly written. So first I do the head list there.
Yeah.
Then I do the distillation of that comes to about 600. So that's the plan. This is actually just the plan. This looks like that. So then you get cycles of work. And then if you work on 1,000 and you have roughly a 60% distillation rate, so you still got 60% after you've distilled it, which is ambitious but doable for French anyway, if you've done French before, and some of this is a bit of a refresher, then it kind of gets up to the high point is where you've got to do in that particular cycle, the high point was here, 1,860 is the actual number of lines for the full cycle, which is where the first lot, the 1,000 batch A, is at the fourth distillation.
Right.
So we're in the silver book, yeah. I'm past that now. I'm already, I'm at this level doing that one now. Yeah.
1,600 lines for that stage.
For this stage, and I'm just I'm basically I think I'm at D2 for I'm at this point. So I've done all of those. All these pieces of work is done down to there. Yeah. So you see, and I map it that way. And you can do all of this, and you can do the numbers.
Yeah,
you can analyse exactly where you are in the project.
Right.
This is my project, and I know exactly how much it's going to be, how much work each of these cycles is going to be, and there's 100% of the project, and I know exactly where I am. I'm right. You can actually point which square on that squared paper you're in of that much work, and it's got 2 humps in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what 50% line is, and I know exactly where I am through my project.
Right.
And I know exactly what that project will give me in terms of additional linguistic competency,
right?
But it won't be necessarily fluency. I need to still activate it. This is a passive methodology. But activation is not a big deal. A lot of people, even in the conference, misunderstand all you need to do for activating, you need to go to a place for 3 days. I'm going to Paris on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't have 3 days there, but even just going there is going to activate a few of the stuff.
Sure.
Et à ce moment, je peux parler un petit peu plus couramment le français qu'auparavant parce que je le fais pendant mes études de Gold List. Oui, c'est pas une activation de toute façon pleine, mais c'est quelque chose. Oui, alors en faisant son Gold List, on est un peu activé dans cette langue. Yeah, I don't know if you do French.
No, but I understand enough of it to.
So
get
just basically, without activating the French, I'm already just from doing the goal list. It's already half activating it,
yeah.
but it's a passive method. I'm not pretending it's going to make people active,
Right.
but they'll be a bit more active. I did the other wonderful thing about when you use the goal list is you don't have to use English if you are English, or you don't have to use Danish if
Right.
you're Danish. You can make, especially it's useful if you're not English, because we've got an awful lot of very good materials written in the English language. So a lot of the time, I bet you used to learn Hungarian, for example, materials that have been written in English.
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because you're absolutely fluent in English, and why would you do anything other than get the best materials you can?
Right.
And probably you can get better ones in English because of
I'm
the
not
size.
sure there are any Danish Hungarian materials.
There might not be because it's not a very very big readership, is it? So who's going to write a book? You know, because I mean, who's going to write that thing? Because you might not sell many copies. Yeah, and the idea about writing is if you're going to sell copies. Yeah,
of course.
So who's going to write the book Danish, Hungarian for Danish speakers?
Right.
When most of the Danish speakers wishing to learn Hungarian probably already did another language.
Yeah.
And odds on that language was English.
Yeah, probably.
And so it's not gonna be the most popular thing. But this is what, as well, for an English speaker, you don't have to use that English language material. For example, I bought for Farsi in the yesterday's book fair. I bought a book, a vocabulary builder from German.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got German estimates as well.
Well, last time I did that was Czech. I used the Langenscheidt. Don't laugh. German Czech.
The yellow ones.
Yes, that's right. Yes, the German Czech pocket Langenscheidt.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, I know those. Yeah.
But it was actually I'm getting a bit juvenile now, but it was actually good because it was really 15,000 word vocabulary.
Right.
15,000.
You think that's a good target in your experience?
Yeah,
15,000?
I mean, I think that the ambitious learner should try and get themselves if they want to do, and the real marathon is to goal list the whole dictionary.
Sure.
But there's really no need to do the Victor Berriot thing. And
he is going all in.
He's got a 60,000 word dictionary of Cantonese.
Right.
And he is goal listing the whole thing.
Yes.
And that is hardcore.
That is.
But he's
hardcore.
already done more with goal lists than I've done it. And I invented it. Yeah. which is really, for me, that's great. I love it.
I
love the
great ambassador.
He's brilliant. And there are more ambassadors now on the goal list method user group on Facebook, because we have 70-day challenges.
Oh yeah, I've been following those. Yeah,
and now we've got a few people there that have taken the challenge within 70 days to do 10,000 lines.
10,000. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm very happy if I go over 5,000 over 70 days.
Right.
Yeah. But 10,000 lines over 70 days. That is really the equivalent of a language to professional to degree level every year.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that level of study that would obviously the goal list method, it gets you there with the least actual invested time.
Right.
But it isn't the least time from start to finish.
Right.
Yeah. So it's actually not the fastest way. The fastest way would be still an SRS,
right?
But it would probably be Anki or Super Memo.
Right.
That'd probably be your quickest way. Some people are swearing by Duolingo.
Yeah, or Memrise, or there's lots of these today.
Yeah, but the the problem is with those is that they're still asking you questions about a word even after you're pretty sure you know.
Yeah.
The way that Goldlist method is sure you know something is that you know it after 14 days, therefore you're going to know it, and that's
Right.
the key to Goldlist idea.
And you're testing yourself.
If you know it after 14
kinda.
days, you're going to know it forever.
Right.
Which is actually a lie.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you do forget stuff.
Yeah.
Even in your native language.
But it's not true.
You
The whole of Goldlist method, you heard it here first, is based on a lie.
Right.
Yeah. That is that if you remember something after 14 days, you remember it always.
Right.
Yeah. Which is what it's based on.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a lie.
Yeah. I've forgotten things that
Yeah.
I used to know.
But it's true enough
Yeah.
to work.
And you can easily find it if you activate the language and you hear some of the context around it.
Yeah.
It comes back somehow magically.
Yeah. But even though it's not necessarily true, it works.
It still works, yeah.
And that makes it true.
Yeah.
What isn't actually objectively true becomes true because it works
Yeah.
in practice. Because for most things it is true. It's just not always true.
Right.
And the times when it isn't when it doesn't work, again, frequency of readdressing it in the course of having other things in language will mean that in the end, I mean there are words in English that I have trouble with that they don't come up to the tip of my tongue necessarily. Well, it's even things that you use a lot in practice in work.
Yeah.
They're not always on the tip of your tongue.
Of course. So that would be part of your passive. If you saw it, you could probably understand it
Oh, you
right
definitely
away.
understand it.
But if somebody asks you, how do you say, you might not be able
Yeah.
to think of it, pull it out of the active memory. But
Yes.
it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good enough for me. Definitely.
Yeah, but like, for example, somebody would to say to you, okay, give me a synonym for peripatetic.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what that means in the first place.
Well, if you do a lot of goal listing, you will probably come to it sooner or later.
Right.
But a word which I came to was itinerant.
Right.
Yeah? Which means about the same as peripatetic in
Okay.
English. Yeah? Not exactly the same, but similar, and similar enough. And it was a moment's thinking to get there, and it was on the tip of my tongue, and I had to really kind of delve deep mentally to pull it up.
Right.
Yeah? Which, when you're just sitting there thinking for one word, you can do it, but in the course of a sentence that you're speaking, and you don't want to sound like an idiot, you're going to be going
Yeah.
But anyway, a lot of people speak like that anyway. I don't think maybe I do. It'll come out on the podcast whether I do or not. But a lot of people that when they talk,
they stutter a lot. Yeah.
and giving lots of time.
I think it's very American.
Well, it's certainly some people do it in British English as well.
Right.
But I think the British are less bothered if they simply make a long pause in the middle of their sentences without filling it in with anything. In broadcasting it's called dead air.
That's better than saying the.
Well, it's better than going. Nah.
Well,
Once I was teaching English when I was a kid, I got some pocket money before I realised that language teaching was immoral. That'll go down well with your listeners. I actually did. I did teach English to some Brazilians.
Oh yeah.
And one of the Brazilian students I had, he was older than me, but he used to say you instead of just he had to make these engine noises.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying you and then looking as though he was thinking, he had to fill in that space. I suppose in Brazil it may well be a cultural thing that if you don't keep making a noise, somebody jumps in.
Yeah.
They don't like the silence too much. Yeah, maybe that's it.
Well, when I started out doing this podcast, I was looking for ways to improve, and I listened to myself, and I read about it, and I listened to other podcasters, and I realized that it's not very difficult to have a good radio, well, not voice necessarily, that's mostly biological, I think, but having a good command of your voice is mostly about not saying those stop sounds or words. Because if I just take a 1 second pause, that sounds fine. Yeah. But if I start to go and hum and you can notice it instantly, a drop in quality. And you might not even know you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
But you can definitely hear the difference if you compare two recordings like that. So I definitely agree that if you want to improve your perceived level in the language or quality than just taking a really quick pause. But I guess it's to do with nervousness and
people
you
don't
feel
like the
timid.
dead air. Because I think you basically have to, in the end, take command of the situation. You have to you fill in with I think body language, but also facial expression, which is part of body language anyway. But I think
Macro
you just
and
have
micro.
have to get used to the fact that it's better to simply make a pause. And it's more democratic anyway, because if somebody does want to jump in there, at least they've got the chance.
Exactly.
Which is all right.
Yeah. And a technical jump in from the goal list. You said about the sentences versus the words.
Yes.
And that's something I'd like to talk to you. This is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I can.
Stop it again. Don't cut it out.
No.
Don't cut it out. I like it. That
Well,
suits my random way of doing things.
I like to keep it real.
Yes.
But I guess in the meantime, I can show you the start of mine.
That's excellent.
And it was just what I had lying around.
Okay, that's very nice. So
And,
this is.
No,
Sorry,
don't. That's just
sorry,
random scribbles.
Okay.
And here I did it the mirrored way,
Okay, yeah.
and then I got it
Well,
right.
the reason I like to start on the top left is that you go around in a nice circle.
Right.
And I got that idea. I mean, you know this infinity sign, the 8 or what have
Yes.
you, doing it like keeping your brain in an alpha state. It likes to go around naturally around the top. And the way that you draw an 8 sign is naturally, it's like it's going in a clockwise way at the top and
Right.
it goes anti-clockwise at the bottom. So we're doing a clockwise here. I mean, essentially, silver could be anti-clockwise just to keep it like that idea of like going on forever. But I do it always the same. It's
Right.
always at clockwise.
Yeah.
And that enables me. I mean, obviously, a clock starts at 1 is at the top right, but I do it from there, and then that gives me. I just find it a lot more useful because, well, apart from anything else, Aldam, not Alam Polgar, and that's not a long A.
Well, they could very well be.
Look, you put a long A there and you didn't put the long A going forward.
Sloppy.
Now, I don't speak Hungarian.
That's sloppy. Yeah.
Take care of it though. That's one of the reasons why it's a good idea to have a good handwriting, because I think.
Yeah, mine is terrible.
Well, I think you wrote Alam Polgar and then you've
Yeah,
read
it is
yourself
Alam.
as Aldam Polgar.
It is Alan Polgar, but
yeah,
I
well,
guess
you've written Aldam Polgar.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Yeah?
Yes, my handwriting. But I mean, that is a good thing for me, that I have to sort of I have to learn how to do handwriting, because when I grew up, there was virtually no handwriting left.
That
in
is the
school.
thing of the younger generation. They don't do it, but it will help you.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I guess maybe if you look at the.
Although I have got somebody that I'm working with that's supposed to be doing an app.
Right. Well, if you look at the last one, maybe I don't know if there's any signs of improvement. It's probably not, but.
Well, it'll take a while, but sorry, I don't be mean or anything. But the longer you do it, the better it will be. That's
Right.
clear. Yeah. Don't expect it's going to be overnight. But there's nothing to stop you while you're doing the words to try to make sort of like mnemonics if they present themselves.
Sure. Yeah, I try to do that.
But don't do it. But don't do it by force. Yeah. So, for example, if something is obviously going to help you, be like an almost automatic mnemonic.
Yeah, I do that. I do that for sure.
Like this one, for example.
Yeah, Quran. Yeah, Quran.
It means early. Yeah.
Yeah, so
you can obviously imagine a Muslim getting up early
Right.
and reading his Quran. Yeah.
Definitely.
But so it's just like an obvious mnemonic.
Yeah, there are lots of them in Hungarian, so that's
Yes.
that's definitely useful.
But
this is relatively recent, actually. I haven't even had a chance to look through it. But
the neater you do it, the more you will be motivated to do it nicely and to do the full project. And it'll be something that gives you pleasure when you read it back to yourself.
So the question about the sentences that I had was, I understand that learning by context is quite helpful.
Yeah.
And that if you have an example, it could just be a turn of phrase, or it doesn't have to be a long sentence. But
Well, if you're doing mainly words here, I mean,
I haven't done mine
at this
sentence.
level, yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
This is very basic.
You'd do like this, the example sentences that illustrate a point of grammar.
Right.
You definitely want to include them as a sentence.
Yeah.
But then later, once you get enough grammar to know how you put things together in Hungarian, yeah, where you've got, like, for example, you've got your holiday here, your szabadság here, and you've got your tavas spring, yeah?
Yeah.
You'd put them together in the correct way, which I'm not going to suggest that I know what it is because my Hungarian grammar is from Hungar, but to give yourself, like, spring holiday, or here you have winter, tail, you'd say winter holiday, yeah?
Right.
But you can then put them together. And if you'd found it difficult, this is the wonderful thing about combining. If you'd found it difficult to learn one of those words in isolation, the wonderful thing is that when you actually put it together with another word,
Yeah.
it becomes easier, not more difficult.
Right. And you said you did
To
that
remember
sometimes when you were moving something from headless to distillation. Sometimes
Yes.
you would combine some of them.
Well, that's most of what I do is combining.
right.
Because you really can't do, I mean, what you want, you've got 25 per page, which you've done absolutely right. And you want to try and get away. I often make a plan, and I'll show you how my plan distillations look, because you can sometimes see some of them. I don't always do it, but there we are. For example, you see these X's with circles around. That's a planned distillation.
So you plan to combine them.
So I planned. Sometimes I go through. Not in the 14 days. This is important. This is after the 14. After the 14 days are up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just plan it a little bit ahead. Yeah. And you just go and you look and see how am I going to, and then you plan to take, you will normally from this, I plan to get eight to get to this, but you know, I've done rather fewer. Sorry, 8 of those goes to those, and then 5 of those goes to that. I'm sorry. So if I'd got the marks here, I should have at least 8. Here I should have at least 5, but I didn't do 5. But then in the event, I probably got 5 off, because as you can see, this is 13, and this is rather 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yes.
But I guess it changes
I
often.
did get 5, yeah.
I mean,
but if it doesn't matter if you don't, it's because the next
Right.
page. Look, there's the next page, and I've planned 6 and probably done 7.
Right.
And
And that way you also, in a way, you practice your comprehension of the language, because if you're trying to combine 2 words into a sentence, you're using the language practically.
well,
as well.
you might have even 2 little bits of sentences that you've got, yeah. Or you might just simply just take on just the part of the thing that you want to do, yeah. For example, in this, I had a sentence that came out of the material. Si vous campez dans le massif central, vous entendez les grelots des brebis, yeah. Which is, if you camp in the massif central, yeah. You hear the bells on the sheep, yeah?
Right.
But the only thing that I didn't really know there was the bells and the sheep. The Massif Central I've known since I was a little boy, and Compe is obvious, so everything there is obvious except for les grelots de brebis. So I just took this just to take out part of that
Right.
sentence. So down here I've got les grelots de brebis, all I've taken forward.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah? So
That's clever. Yes.
So and then what you might want to do is take another part of the sentence, yeah, the bit that you didn't know before, yeah.
Yeah.
Like here, the réveille-toi, j'entends la clochette du steward, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The bit that I'm not particularly likely to, or I probably will remember it this time, but the bit which I might not have remembered, obviously réveille-toi, j'entends is obvious, yeah. La clochette du steward is the important bit there, yeah. And if I'm still having difficulty in this, I might write a sentence with, was that the steward's little bell, yeah, or was it the bell of a sheep, yeah.
Combine it with the.
And then make a sentence like that, so that I can combine the 2 words for bell, which are different because of different context, yeah. Or just simply like clochette equals steward, grelot equals brebis,
Right.
Yeah. Just make it smaller than that, but a sentence is nicer.
Yeah.
And then or you can make a sentence or a small phrase, which you then imagine to be like the title of a picture or a poem,
Right.
or another work of art. And you just imagine what that work of art or song or poem might be like, what kind of an image it brings in your mind. here's le bourdon de la cathédrale. Yeah, le bourdon is a large bell. Yeah, so hearing bourdon on its own,
Right.
that might be enough for some people. Some people might realise that word burden actually exists in English, but most people don't know it.
Right. So would you say that when you're at a beginning stage and you want to get into goal listing after you've had a little bit of an impression of the pronunciation and you understand the language, do you think that you would start mostly by single words and then move on to sentences?
Well, it depends. I mean, the reason why I'm doing a lot of sentences here is that I did French before,
Right.
and what I'm really doing is refreshing it with this. So it's a slightly different use
Right.
of goal list, getting it up to a bigger level, getting a
Right.
kind of turn of phrase in French, if you know what I mean.
Because I imagine most
Rather
listeners
to
would be...
help me write more, to help me
Right.
write emails
You know-
in French and understand and get me prepared to listen to literature.
Right.
So those sentences are sometimes I'm writing things which I know very well, just to have a nice sentence to get a bit of context.
Right,
But,
that's a good thing about the method,
yeah.
isn't it? That it's
doesn't
all
matter.
subjective. You know,
Yeah.
there's no rules. It's only what you
Any
want.
material you want to put in, yeah.
What do you think is important?
Well, I think is at the beginning, it's good to put words in and to put grammar rules in, even
Okay.
if you write them in English, and to put example sentences in, yeah?
Right.
And at the head list, and then you start to combine them using the grammar that you learn in order to make small phrases.
Right.
Yeah? So at the early stage, you do that. My French is reasonably advanced, yeah.
Yeah.
So therefore, I do different things with it, and there are some good materials with some nice example sentences showing the use of a word in a context, and
Right.
I put them in. But I probably do too much sentence work, really, more than I need to. But some of the sentences, some of the stuff, I mean, I'm using the Routledge or Routledge again, the frequency dictionary
Right.
that has nice example sentences taken from the
Right.
corpus, so that's real French, yeah. And I'm also using mot à mot,
Right.
which has got some small phrases in, and sometimes I take a few phrases of a similar thing and then join them together to make a mini story almost, yeah.
Fantastic.
In a way which you wouldn't really speak about, because a lot of them is like three fairly synonymous things being said one after another. It becomes almost like kind of comedic.
Yeah.
But at least it's a way of making you. We're having great luck, aren't we? Here, every single thing with a bell on it in Berlin is being our clochette de Stuvard at the moment. So. Yeah.
Well, I like it, and also one of the reasons I didn't mention this that I started goal listing again was because most of my work is on the computer. My job is on the computer, my friends are on the computer, my hobbies, my entertainment, my King Deutsches. Everything I do is on the computer, so having a method where I can, run off to the side and sit in a nice cafe with a coffee and use a good fashioned notebook and learn how to do handwriting, because I've never done it.
And if you're doing just planning destinations, you don't even need, for that part, you don't even need a flat surface. I mean, if I'm with this in like a bus or in something where because I'm like yourself, I'm slightly a portly gentleman, probably more portly than you, and I have this problem. I don't know if you have this, but I can't always, in some of these airplanes, I can't always get the seat to come all the way down. It depends on how generous they are with space.
Sure.
So if you can't even put this flat in the table in front of you, and you have to have it like this, it's fine for actually planning distillations, because you're just reading it and just making annotations like I showed you.
Right.
Yeah? So you can even do some useful work with it.
Yeah.
With no space at all, sitting on a park bench or whatever. If you're in a park and you've got like a park bench with a nice little picnic table in front of you, you can sit there in the sun and do it. Of course, you can't do that with a computer because the sun's going to make you unable to see the screen.
Right.
You can't do it with a mobile phone in that situation, with a phone app. That having been said, people are working together with me for an app for this.
Right.
Because I know that there's a lot of people in the younger generation that if you show them one of these,
Yeah.
it's going to panic.
Well, you see, I think I'm in the grey area where I still could do handwriting, and I guess I'm just old enough. But if you showed it to somebody in the 90s,
Yeah.
they would be like, "What is this?"
You're a borderline millennial.
Yes, 88.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's very close.
Well,
I think
I
we
was 64, so that was borderline between baby boomer and Generation X.
right.
So that's really true actually, because I see when people write down things which are true about boomers and Generation X people, I see half of it applies to me. For half of that I'm with the boomers, and for half of it I'm with the Generation X. Yeah. So it's funny. I have to laugh when I read these things.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to testing it. You know, one of my jobs, I guess, or one of my hobbies within language learning is to just find out what works and give people my honest review.
Well, go ahead.
And so I'm looking.
Not everybody loves it. I mean, some people just can't get their head around ever aren't willing to. They have the block exactly on the handwriting. I think when the app finally comes out, when my friend who's doing it finally gets his act together and says it's ready to publish.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be certainly interesting. Because it ain't going to be free, so that's going to be interesting from that perspective.
Well, yeah.
Everything's free about this, of course. Yeah, I gave all the knowledge of how to do this with nothing, but the app. That's
sure.
Because it's going to be, people are going to have it online. It's going to be available from the cloud, so their vocab lists are going to be on there. That's going to have a certain cost,
of course,
associated. So we're going to have to charge for it just to keep that.
I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Available, and it's going to be. That's not going to be not for profit. Whereas if anybody wants to complain about that, then my answer is simply, you got the free version. Yeah. The book's not going to be free either, because paper costs money. Last time I looked. Yeah. So, but the videos are all free. What I told about it in the Polyglot project. I'm talking about the initial Polyglot project, not the modern version of that.
We are not talking about.
We're not talking about that
last
one. But that's all. Obviously that's not necessarily free either if you buy the paper copy. But there is a non-paper copy available still for download.
Right. No, I totally support that decision.
Yeah. So,
I don't think everything should be free. Even on a fundamental level, even if there were no costs.
I've given more free than just about everybody. I mean, your podcasts are free, so you're on the same level as me. But if you wanted to make an additional service, like one level up, which was a bit more intensive, and
I would write a book. I think
nobody would say a dicky. But there's people in this lovely conference with us that almost everything that they do is paid. Some of it is bloody expensive.
Oh
for what you get.
Yes, for sure.
So and I'm not actually even criticising them, because everybody's got to live somehow.
Yes.
I mean, I'm in a luxury situation. I've got a lot of outgoings because of my family, but I am an accountant at the end of the day. I do audits, that's a profession. You get paid a professional wage.
Right.
So I mean, it's not like I'm starving or anything. But the thing is that some people, they can't afford to do that, and so they live by languages, and they don't give much before they're asking for money, and so. Nobody can say that about the goal list method, because you can use it free,
Yeah.
I mean, assuming that you can. Obviously, nobody usually hands out textbooks and exercise books completely free, but the textbooks you buy anyway. The exercise book and the pens are not much money.
No.
For a single language lesson.
Yeah.
You would save enough money just on not having a lesson to buy enough materials to do a whole gold list project of 20,000 words from beginning to end.
I'm sure that there'll be lots of people buying it, if not to use it, then definitely to show the support for the method they're currently using. So
the other day, Gareth mentioned in his talk about the goal list method.
Yeah.
And afterwards, Lydia came up to me and said, "I use your method."
Yeah.
She teaches it.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, to her students.
Yes, university students in Slovakia. Yeah.
And now they're learning. So I offered to her that if she likes, I'll Skype in one of her lessons and say hello to some of her students.
That'll be fun.
I was given a big buzz by finding out that she teaches it, and I think it's good. I mean, I think if a teacher really means to help their students really get it's like almost like being out in the country.
Yeah, it's a very nice view, isn't it?
View.
You've got the penthouse here.
Yeah. There's one might almost think one wasn't in the heart of a city with that view.
Yeah.
The other side's a bit different, but
yeah. We got very lucky with this room.
But I think if anybody wants to really help their students to become self-taught.
Yeah.
That if they learn the goal list method themselves and then pass that on, they'll be doing their students hopefully a good turn.
Right.
Not every, like I said before, not everybody gets on with doing the handwriting.
Well, that's definitely a barrier to overcome. But
Yeah.
like I said, for me, it's also a digital detox, so
Yeah.
that also helps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just find for me, I mean, like I say, I'm part way between Boomer and Generation X, so any Boomer is going to be very comfortable with handwriting.
Yeah.
And to actually still have the opportunity to handwrite will be very relaxing for them.
Yeah.
So it's, but that doesn't mean to say, because this goes into a memory. I mean, the stylus, the actual holding of a pen rather than working on a keyboard. That's a very natural way to write. Human beings have been writing from the beginning of being human. They've been writing with styluses. They haven't been writing with keyboards.
No.
And we've developed a kind of memory over that time that works very well with a stylus.
I'm sure there are neural connections
Yeah.
between the motor neurons controlling this movement to the memory region as well.
Well, that's right, but I mean, it's the same movement that you'd have anywhere in your body. For example, when somebody doesn't have any hands left, let's say that they went on holiday to a very strict Islamic country and somebody accused them of nicking something and they don't have any hands left after that. So they get given a pen to use from, let's say, they get a special nasal attachment.
Right.
And when they sign their name with this pen, just using their nose, they're going to actually sign their name in the same handwriting.
Wow.
It may be a lot bigger because it's not easy to get those delicate movements with the face that you have with the hand. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you sometimes may notice that that's a bit of a shortcoming of oral sex over actually. Anyway, I'm not going to go there, but it's difficult to actually get the delicate movements with one's nose that one has maybe, or even with one's tongue that one has with the fingers. Yeah.
Right.
So you can write your signature very small by hand.
Yes.
Yeah? Whereas if you attach a pen to your nose, you can sign bigger on a bigger piece of paper. Yeah. But it's going to be the same signature.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you do it with your foot, if you were to sign your name now with your foot, obviously it might be a little bit angular, but basically it's the same signature.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, and if you had a pen that was attached between your toes, after a few days of getting used to it, and you had a more smooth motion, you would have the same handwriting.
Right.
You'd have the same signature with your foot, with your elbow, any part of your body, because your body's connected with your brain with these movements. Yeah. Whereas it's not the same as
on the computer.
On the computer.
No.
Yeah. Yes, there is a memory there. You can remember. That's why people write company instead of company, because they get into the habit of writing it in that way, and it's
typos.
And then you get typos that are the same typos every time because you got it into your head to do
right
it.
Next to
so there's obviously is a memory for the keyboard.
Yeah.
And you get faster, so that's memory.
Of course. Yeah.
But it's not the same deep connection that aids memory that you get between a stylus motion or a bodily movement of the body in the shape of the letter, which is what a stylus is. It's a movement of the body and the body's muscles in the shape of that letter. You're following the shape of the letter. You don't have that on a keyboard.
No.
So you haven't experienced that word in a motion related way.
Right.
Now all you've done is you've tapped out on a random.
But some people don't even create with the keyboard. Some people just have the memorize where they just they just slide, they click yes, no. They don't even create the original cards. Yeah. So I also think the creation process is very important for memory.
I regard that as rather, yes and no would be all right if.
That's what Enki does basically, isn't it? How well do you know this word? You have to click.
Yeah. It's not as much effort as to write it out again.
Right.
Thankfully, but then when you say that you know it, then they still ask you again.
Yeah, you can choose how well you know it.
Yeah.
If you in Enki, but that's the confusing part I get.
But the thing is, if you're not being given a 2-week break, you think you know it and you don't.
Right.
That's the whole idea of where the golden method differs.
Right.
And that's why at the end of the day you economise on time.
That's why I never liked Enki actually, because you're given a choice of how well you know a word, and the choices are ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like, is it a 2-hour word or is it a 24-hour word? But how do I know?
Yeah.
Ask
You
me
don't
again
know.
in 24 hours. If I
Yes,
still know it,
that's right.
it's obviously a 24-hour
That's
word.
exactly the logic of the. That is that you've put your finger exactly on the logic of the goalless method. Yeah?
It is-
You
it's
know
impossible.
ex post if you remembered it or not.
Right.
If you didn't remember it, you have to write it out again.
Yeah.
If you remembered it after 14 days, you'll probably remember it for quite a lot longer.
Right.
The little
Yeah.
white lie that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And therefore you write it out again, or you combine it, or you just write it out again, in order to get through the plan things. And at every stage it works. So if you look, I mean, you're fairly at the beginning.
Yeah.
So on the ones which you did already, you didn't necessarily get down because you didn't use all of the methodologies that you could have had of combining things
Right.
together. So it's not as condensed as it will easily be when you get used to that.
Right.
But if you look at my one, for example, that I pulled out earlier, I think I put it back here. If you look at my one again, you'll see that at each stage you get a regular kind of, well, sometimes you get a very nice, I managed to knock that one down to that particular point, very very heavy, but basically all the way through. If I show you as far as I've got with the D3 level, again that was very good. So that's after 2,700. Of those, I've got 1620, which is exactly 60% here.
Wow.
Yeah. That is pretty much 1053 from 1620 is pretty much 60% again.
Yeah.
And there we have it again. 710 from 1053. That's not quite 60%. That's more like a 65%.
Mm-hmm.
But at each stage, it's going down regularly.
Yeah.
And you can monitor all that. You can easily get your calculator function in your phone and just calculate all your percentages, make sure that you're. And doing that as well as doing that regularly as you go through. Also, make sure you haven't counted things wrongly. That you haven't, missed 1,000 or something, which can happen.
You put the wrong 1,000.
And another benefit of all of this is it makes you a little bit more numerate too.
Right.
Because you're thinking of it in a numbers way, and anything, all the practice that you get with looking at things, from a point of view of measuring, enumerating, what have you, it develops that side of the brain. It keeps the brain nicely. I don't even pretend to believe too much in this left brain, right brain business, and I'm not intending any time soon to break anyone's head open and start messing about inside of it. But people say different skills balanced together is a good thing for the mind.
Yeah, I don't really.
And a lot of the people that are using a lot of these methods, they're completely ignoring and I would say even neglecting the numerate part of their brain, whereas the goalless method keeps that nicely in sync. Because you are thinking of things as numbers as well as
there's also a natural progression. So when some of the things that can be hard for a learner is that you don't even see the mountain in front of you. It's so overwhelming. But if you can constantly say, look, yesterday I added another 100 and now I'm at this level, there's constant progress, and more importantly you have your target as well. You say, I'm going to go, was it 1,000 for the first one, and I'm going to go up to 15,000. So you're constantly on track as well, whereas if you just do random flashcards, you don't really know how many you started with, you don't know how many you went to. The only thing that tells you is you have 1,733 flashcards to review. And that can be quite overwhelming.
There are some versions. I mean, read the kanji.com for Japanese is quite good in that it gives you good statistical analysis. It's a paid service, but it's probably worth it in most cases. I don't pay much because I got in there nice and early, and I've been paying the same for years. But it's basically a pretty good thing.
Right. Well,
somebody's trying to call me.
It's Dennis. But
here, so it is. It's Dennis.
We have a caller to the show. He's calling in with a question for.
I don't know.
For us.
I don't know if you can do that. Can you actually bring a caller in?
Yeah, why not? Oh, did he hang up?
He might.
He hung up.
Okay.
But anyway,
I don't know if it's actually going to record through that or not.
No, but I was thinking we could put the speaker on. That would record it.
Oh, we're back at the beginning with the recording now.
Okay.
So,
but I've got it on this. But
okay.
I was gonna wrap up and say thank you for sharing your method and your story with the world.
Okay.
It's really been
quite a long one, that one, hasn't it?
Been a fan from the beginning.
Yeah.
And
how many minutes did we get?
Well, we're up to I don't know what it says here. 1 hour. Oh, almost 2 hours.
Oh, that'll be one of your longest.
Yes, for sure. But I don't know how much to cut out with the
don't cut
noise
it
and the political correctness and.
Don't cut it out.
I don't believe in anything.
I don't know. It's fine. There's nothing. There's nothing I said that was particularly. For me, that was actually quite tame. So.
So you've done well this time. No, but seriously, thank you. I really love your material.
We didn't do any Huliganov, so but the advantage is, if you like, we can do them separately.
We've got that
another time.
We've got that for.
You got the 10-minute bit.
Yes, and also I was thinking we could save that for another jolly good time.
We can do that. We can do one specifically for Russian learning with him if you want.
Oh yeah,
or something where he goes on about how language learning is all wrong under the European Common Framework.
Well, I'm just going to stop this now, but thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Thank you so much for listening to the Actual Fluency podcast. If you want to come onto the podcast and share your language learning story, don't hesitate to apply on actualfluency.com/guest. See you in the next one.